Trump is a badass.
Mr. Reagan.
Trump is cool. Now, a Democrat would scoff at this statement, and even many conservatives, especially conservatives who are themselves objectively cool, they might be a bit skeptical. But I assure you, Trump is cool. Allow me to submit into evidence the following clips.
Why are you here today? To support Donald Trump.
To support Donald Trump.
To keep it real, he don't got no filter. He's for the people.
Everything was under control. We had low inflation. We had gas under $1.80.
In the Bronx right now, it's definitely crime.
Prices is extreme.
Trump is black as I am, you heard?
We love Trump! We love Trump! We love Trump!
So I don't care what the media tells you, Mr. Trump. We support you.
Come here, let me give you a hug.
Please
Thank you, sweetheart. That's really nice.
It may not seem like it, but this is evidence. This stuff is directly related to Trump's being cool. But not just cool. One of the coolest presidents of all time. Or, as I mentioned in the title of this video, a badass. I'll explain this in one moment. First, of course, I have to sell you something. You guys know as well as anyone that gold equals stability. With the unpredictable stock market and economic turmoil, gold shines as a safe haven. Bishop Gold Group is America's trusted precious metals dealer, and they offer refuge from financial uncertainty. Protect your retirement from the looming threats of taxes and penalties by investing in gold. Don't wait for the next market crash. Now is the time to safeguard your wealth by converting stocks and retirement funds into gold. Unlike volatile digital assets, holding physical gold puts security directly into your hands. Trust Bishop Gold Group to guide you through securing your retirement with the stability of precious metals. And Bishop is offering up to $10,000 in free silver with a qualified purchase. So call 833-703-4138 or go to bishopgoldgroup.com/Reagan or click the link in the description below to start investing in gold today. For a while, I have been thinking about this question. What does it mean to be cool? And I had a revelation about this. Perhaps the most fundamental element of what we perceive as cool is athleticism. Because what is it to be athletic, truly athletic? Born into your genes. You're born, you play some sports, and you're pretty good at it. It means that you're probably strong. It means you're powerful. It means you have good rhythm. It means you have elegant, graceful movements. You've got good motor skills, hand-eye coordination. And it means that you move and you act and oftentimes that you speak with confidence. Everything you do has intention and you are confident about what you are doing. Now, there are certainly a myriad of other aspects of being cool, but I actually submit that without a baseline of athleticism, everything else tends to be perceived as trying too hard. You've heard the term effortlessly cool, but I think that's a bit redundant because being cool, I believe, requires a kind of naturalness. If you're putting effort into being cool, it's no longer cool. And a baseline of athleticism, whether or not you're actually participating in athletic activities, is necessary to be perceived as cool. You can be ugly or attractive, low IQ, high IQ, sedentary, short, skinny, or even fat. As long as you are predisposed to being somewhat athletic, you will probably be perceived as cool. And the left has been trying to brainwash us into believing that being cool has nothing to do with athleticism for years now. They want you to think that cool is the heroin chic rock star, or nowadays, the morbidly obese pop singer. And I think that this has something to do with the fact that leftists aren't actually cool, but they're very good at lying. And so they know that they can convince a lot of people that being cool has nothing to do with a genetic predisposition towards athleticism. And for a long time, I too was convinced of this. But this is idiotic. Of course it does. Being cool is being confident, and being confident is being in control. And being in control of your own body is probably the most rudimentary kind of control that there is. Imagine an excellent athlete, good physique, good motor skills, hand-eye coordination, good rhythm, graceful, elegant movement, not in an athletic jersey, but in a suit and tie. You don't lose all that stuff, the effects of your athleticism, when you put on a suit and tie. If anything, the suit amplifies it. Because none of those things are really necessary for doing office work. And so if you're dressed fashionably, but you still retain the robust confidence and graceful movement of an athlete, people see that. And they translate that nuanced physicality, that confident attitude, into what we call cool. And now Trump doesn't seem terribly athletic. He famously loves fast food and he never exercises. But over the course of his school years, Trump participated in at least 11 sports and was apparently an excellent baseball player. And so he certainly has that baseline athleticism. And with that, he has an overt confidence. And with that baseline of confidence, he has been able to layer other important aspects of being cool onto that. But what are these other factors that can be layered on top of the athleticism? Well, we mentioned earlier fashion, a well-tailored suit and tie. I think a lot of people consider fashion a mask. But to me, fashion that masks who you are, this is bad fashion. Good fashion, I think, accentuates what you've already got. Certain people look best in certain kinds of clothes. That's it. And having a good fashion sense indicates that you know yourself. And wearing clean, pressed clothes indicates that you take care of yourself. Another layer is comedy. Of course, comedians tend to be considered cool. Being principled, I think, actually indicates that you are cool. And I'll get to that more in a second. And then, of course, finally, being a rebel. Being a rebel is one of the most popular kinds of cool in America. But why? What is being a rebel? Well, the rebel is a popular kind of cool because it is a sign of strength. Being a rebel is a natural consequence of being principled. Now, it might also just be the resentful rebellion of a teenager who's trying to lash out at his parents or society or the cops or whatever. But even when it's not about being principled, it comes across that way. People think this guy's cool because he's standing up to authority. He's doing what he thinks is right. He's rejecting the rules that he thinks are stupid or silly or unjust or whatever it might be. So even if it's not about being principled, it gets perceived that way by a lot of people. And that's important. I think being principled does seem very cool because it seems like a very difficult thing to do, and you have to be a very strong person to do it. To resist compromising your values in the face of pressure from the group, especially from all of society, that is strength. That is confidence. That is cool. And since conservatism is by far the less popular political philosophy in America, we have become the rebels. And I think that we've been the rebels since the 1980s.
The rebellion is spreading, and I want to be on the side I believe in.
Yeah, meanwhile, I'm stuck here.
You know, they've already started to nationalize commerce in the central systems. It won't be long before your uncle's just a tenant, slaving for the greater glory of the empire.
And you know what? This concept of conservatives being the rebels, this is actually something that I realized in high school. And then I saw something on TV that shocked me. This.
You know, we grew up sort of, I think we were both Python fans and we were both sort of punk rockers, you know, and we wanted to do a punk rock TV show. And when we were growing up, the way to be punk rock was to be really liberal, you know, because we grew up with Reagan in high school and all of that, you know, and then, but then we moved to, the problem was we moved to LA and we did, you know, and then the only way to be punk rock in LA is to be a Republican. Because it's the only way, you know, you're in a party, the only way is to be like, I think George Bush is awesome. Everyone's like, what? You know, just like, you know, and that really, I mean, it's amazing. And when we did Team America.
I've seen Trey do that before, too. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You mean go into a party and say.
Just said it.
I think he's great.
That was in Malibu, and he just said, I love George Bush and I love my gun. And this lady's face just melted. Her
face melted off.
It is like, you know,
that was great to see this because back in high school, I didn't have a YouTube channel. And when this was broadcast, this idea that I had been explaining to my classmates and people that I knew personally, when this idea was broadcast on television, I thought, wow, this might actually be recognized by popular culture. I don't think it really was, but that's what I thought at the time. Occasionally, I have a valuable insight that is later observed by and popularized by other people. I observed back in high school also that conservatives think leftists are wrong, while leftists think conservatives are evil. And I had never heard anybody talk about this before. But even back then, back in the 90s, we treated a leftist as if he was uninformed. And, you know, so we wanted to debate. But leftists, even back then, they had started to run away from debates. in terror because it was like they might catch the conservative evil that had infected us, right? They looked at conservative ideas like leprosy, like you could catch them. Years later, this was observed by the late great Charles Krauthammer. Now, I don't know if he had thought of this like a long, long time ago, like back when I did. He just didn't popularize it until later. But regardless, I was thrilled because this idea did spread like wildfire throughout the conservative diaspora, and now it's basically common knowledge, and I love that. But I guess that is in part why I started my YouTube channel. I figured out that some of my ideas were not being adopted by conservatives until years after I thought about them. And so I was like, maybe I should start a channel and get these ideas out there. And so now here we are. But even so, I don't think that the idea that conservatism is the new cool, I still don't think that this idea has been fully accepted by mainstream America. But there is one person who has given this idea a massive boost, and that is Joe Rogan. The Joe Rogan podcast has become the nexus point of cool in 2024. But of course, Rogan is not really conservative. He's some kind of libertarian. But it is kind of conservative adjacent because he is diametrically opposed to just about everything that the left believes these days. Given the decades of propaganda in Hollywood depicting conservatives as the evil authoritarian Christian establishment, it's kind of strange to see the left become the strict boarding school headmaster governess scolding everyone, demanding that we wear masks, forcing us to conform to their twisted sense of morality. But of course, that has always been the dominion of the left. It is merely their propaganda which has convinced us otherwise. One of the primary tenets of Christianity is to love your enemy. That is, not to cast away those with whom you disagree, not to condemn them, but rather to sympathize with them, to embrace them, to love them. Another primary tenet is treat others the way you would want to be treated. These are not the values of authoritarianism. Certainly some so-called Christians in positions of power have been dictatorial in the past. They have abused their power, and they've reflected poorly on Christendom generally. But these are exceptions. If we want to talk about these things in a systemic way, as leftists like to do, well, then we see that leftism is a rejection of Christianity. Conservatism is fundamentally an embrace of Christianity. And so we see that conservatism is in fact the political philosophy of acceptance and tolerance, and the left is the political ideology of dictatorial totalitarianism. Say that 5 times fast. But the left is very good at propaganda, and so for years they have twisted the truth around. These days, a lot of people believe that Christianity is a vicious, restrictive, authoritarian religion that seeks to control and dominate everyone. And they believe that leftism is the ideology of the free-minded, egalitarian utopia. This is sick. It's like convincing everyone that cloth masks are going to protect you from deadly pathogens, or that men can be women just by thinking it, or that obesity is healthy, or that the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change, or that cauliflower is racist.
When someone says that it's too hard to do a green space that grows yucca instead of, I don't know, cauliflower or something, what you're doing is that you're taking a colonial approach to environmentalism.
Now, Christians, true Christians, we tend to stand up for our beliefs, our principles. And so when we become a persecuted minority, as we've become in America, we do not simply bend to the whims of our oppressors. Certainly, there is the Christian edict to turn the other cheek. And so many Christians do not fight against their persecution, but they do stand firm on their principles. And that, in essence, is a naturally rebellious position. And being a rebel, as I mentioned before, is a very strong type of cool. And of course, Trump may not be a principled Christian, at least not as far as I'm aware. But Donald Trump has his own rebelliousness in the form of his persecution by the establishment. And it has been pointed out by a variety of conservative sources that black people feel that they can relate to Donald Trump's persecution. But the left-wing media, they have distorted this observation and created a straw man. They've twisted this into an accusation that what we conservatives are really saying is that Trump's prosecutions are what black people relate to. Oh, he got arrested, and conservatives think that all black people get arrested all the time, and therefore they relate to Donald Trump. Of course, we have said no such thing. It's not about getting arrested. It's not about going to court. It's about being persecuted. Many black Americans for decades have believed that the federal government is against them. They believe that the government is unfairly targeting them, unfairly persecuting them. So when black Americans see Donald Trump unfairly persecuted, well, they think, the same people who hate us, they also hate him. And they feel a kind of kinship with Donald Trump.
The nature of this administration is good for us. Because of Trump's way, he is an anomaly. There's never been no president quite like Mr. Trump. Trump is destroying every enemy that was an enemy of our rise. Who's the enemy of our rise? Is it the Department of Justice, where we get none? Is it Congress, where you make a law that favors us and then you turn around and destroy it? Is it the media that has destroyed every black leader that stood up for us, calling us out of our name? Martin Luther King suffered it, Malcolm suffered it, Du Bois suffered it, Marcus Garvey suffered it. So he's attacking the media, calls it fake news. Well, I don't think everything is fake, but I know, I know very well that we have been the victims of some fake news.
Yes.
He's beating up the FBI. Go at it, baby! Because they've been beating the hell out of us ever since J. Edgar Hoover and the counterintelligence program of the U.S. government. So go ahead, Mr. Trump.
And you know what? When black Americans start shifting their political view, it says a lot. Because black people in America, whether you like it or not, they tend to be viewed as the coolest race. The Jews and the Asians, they're considered to be the smartest ones. And they've got that branding. White people, we've got the dominance branding. We're the most populous group. We've developed the country from its inception, and white culture is still the prevailing culture in America. So whatever you think about all that, good or bad, white people are perceived as the dominant group in America still. We also, I think, are perceived as generally competent in most areas. We're not the most intelligent, we're not the most athletic, but we're pretty good in both areas. We're also, I think, perceived as the most creative. You can challenge me on that one if you think that's wrong. And we're also perceived as both cool and nerdy. There are cool white people and there are lame white people. And so we span the whole spectrum in that sense. But black people are considered cool. They've got the best athletes, and as I mentioned before, that contributes greatly to their being perceived as cool. Now, there are a lot of nerdy black guys out there. I have met many myself, but generally in our culture, black culture, I think, is considered the cool culture. And so when black people shift in a major way, like what's happening right now with Donald Trump, I think it's a much more significant sign than what people might at first think. It goes far beyond the fact that Trump is more likely to win the 2024 election. It goes to a broader culture shift where people are finally starting to recognize maybe the left isn't so cool after all. They certainly act more like the unreasonably strict school teacher that we all hated growing up. And maybe, just maybe, those unruly conservatives standing up for their principles, maybe they're the rebels. Maybe they're the cool ones. Maybe they are the badasses. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much. That is not so. Good night.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.